on a Digital World Town Hall. We're grateful for those that are here, that are joining us. Oh, there's a sneak peek in what we're going to talk about. So we'll just give you an update as to some of the things that have happened this last week and then do general question and answer. Grateful for those that are online and grateful for those hosts that are also with us. This may be a forward-looking conversation. It is a private membership association. First thing we'll talk about is a journey, as we've been working a lot with the Hawaiian Kingdom and the different organizations that are built in or around that. We've also started working with the Texans. So whether it's the state of Texas transferring over to the country of Texas, but it's a very important work and something that is becoming a very important priority, primarily because, and I have to be honest, yesterday when I actually came to realize some of this news, it was difficult, emotionally difficult to understand some of the history, and I just didn't personally know it. But the same types of things that happened within the Hawaiian Kingdom also happened within this ecosystem that the world calls Texas today. It was all within the same decade, and the annexation process was basically the same process. The difference is the Hawaiians, they're warriors and they stand up for what's right, but they may not have the depth or the understanding or the ability or even the fight in them like Texans do. And the Texans over the years have literally fought on many different levels. And for instance, in Hawaii, you know what the DNR is, right, Charles? Or the DLNR in some cases, the DLNR sure. Or DNR. That's
Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Yep, that's non-existence within Texas. It doesn't exist. It's not there, and there's reasons for it. So there's a lot. There's also, there's certain things that the state or the ecosystem believes that it can do, and then there's other parts of it that believe, it's never changed all the way back till 1836. It's basically the same republic that was already there. And as we're starting to work with different ecosystems and understanding some of these different things, especially around, the ability to stand up, what the world will look at as Texans, a part of Texan, so not a state, but a nation per se, the reality is being very, very clear, so to speak. So introduction of financial systems, identity management systems, land management systems, all of the parts and pieces that we're already used to, whether we're talking about, specific assets such as vehicles, boats, planes, registrations, all of that out of it that can actually be managed and included, as well as identity from, registrations to licensing, to birth certificates, to marriage certificates, licensing, whether it's the individual or the vehicle. Today is actually the first day that we've been able to see one of these. So you'll actually see the first one. This is actually a real one that uses real derived keys. For those that are aware, you know what? I'm thinking, I want to make sure those visitors, let's see it. Yeah, you guys can actually see. So let me share a screen with you real fast. Sorry, folks, you guys should have told me. So there's a screen, you can see it. What you weren't seeing was all this stuff that it was rolling into. So this is basically here a real time. So this is actually a unique key that's built for this specific number. This number is the last 6 numbers or letters or algorithms tied to this. This, for those that are not aware, this is a cryptographic key, actually a derived key that's a public key, and this actually equates into 12 words. So for those people who are like, what's a 12 words? What's a numeric phrase? These here are basically it. I should probably close those doors if you just want to throw them through. So this is one of the first plates that will actually go on a vehicle today. We literally just got it within the last 15 minutes, and we're going to jump on and drive around. So literally, this is going to go through 4 different states over the next little while. And we're going to actually, tomorrow morning, we're actually going to go to a sheriff's convention where in the United States of America, a lot of these sheriffs come together, and it's actually led by a wonderful man named Michael Flynn. For those of you who don't know his name, he's done some amazing stuff within the government and stood up for truth and right And so tomorrow morning, we'll have an opportunity to spend some time with him, as well as a lot of other sheriffs, which, again, in the United States of America, the forefathers, when they set up the Constitution, they set it up in such a way where the actual responsibility and authority was actually disseminated to the actual county sheriffs. And so we're going to go and work with
Yeah, I'm
these.
here, Mike.
What's that?
This is George.
Hi, George. Welcome. So you may be dialed in. If you are, we've got a lot of other people here with us as well. But welcome. So I don't know if you can see a screen, but basically this plate here is a functional plate that actually scans. When you pull it up, I'll show you some of the details that you can actually jump into. So here's an example of it. So you can basically go through ownership, recording, licensing, financing, registration, insurance, maintenance, and then status. So, all of these different things can happen within different devices, and these are going real time. So this is not just something that's hypothetical. These are real plates. These are real vehicles. These are real reports. These are real scans. So when you actually scan these, they pull up a specific report. And then the goal is an officer, if they want to actually verify an individual's identity, I'm gonna mute somebody here real fast, if that's okay. There we go. So basically, the Texan ecosystem is something that I believe will go down in history just like the Hawaiians. And wouldn't it be beautiful if the Hawaiians actually locked arms with the Texans and used these systems in such a way to actually free humanity, but to do it in a respectful way, in a way that can easily resolve disputes and conflicts. Maybe it's a land management issue. Maybe it's an identity management issue. Maybe it's a financial transaction. Maybe it's, something to do with assets. Maybe it's something to do with disputes. Maybe it's something to do with human rights and how things are being rolled out and controlled. I don't know if you're aware of some of the bills that are going through with basically just privacy violations and human rights violations, but they're actually trying to push them through, similar to what they did with the Patriot Bill, but it's even worse. And so for those that actually want to be a part of the system and add value, it's very difficult, which is different than the 10 to 14 million that have walked across the border in the last 3+ years. So, but it's, like I said before, if my country or my family was in a different part of the world and they wanted to be in a different part, we live on one earth, but the key is how can we do it in a respectful and transparent manner. So a lot of advancements have happened this last week within that ecosystem. For those that want to learn a little bit more about it, go look up the Republic of Texas. This has some good documentation on it. There's actually some better pages that have some of the timeline reviews if you want to see the parallel between the Hawaiian Islands / the Hawaiian Kingdom and the reason that I say this is because they've actually gone through this type of a process. So from the Hawaiian Islands to the Hawaiian Kingdom to the Kingdom of Hawaii to the state of Hawaii, that process was followed in similar ways within a timeline within the ecosystem that's actually found within the Texan timeline as well. I wish I could pull it up. But anyhow, I'll have it on the next one. It's a beautiful document. So I won't spend time on this. But I hope that folks understand if you log in, so to log in, you basically and this will work within all of the different backend systems and then interoperate country to country and state to state, so to speak. But you can actually have assets, and then under that, you've got vehicles. And so that's basically the actual element there. You'll also see some advancements within some of the searching elements. I'll pull that up real fast. So you'll start seeing additional ecosystems from organizations that can be searched. And this will continue to mature this next week as well as assets. So it's not just vehicles, but also homes. We'll talk a little bit about these homes and how they actually can be a part of the future. And that's primarily, both Charles physically or virtually, and Carl, who's lived this life for a very long time. And really none of this would be realized or even happening in any form without his own energy and effort. So we'll spend some time on kind of progress update there, and then also how that ties into the individual ecosystem. So that's kind of a general report out as far as advancements within the development side. So if there's any questions there, if not, we'll jump right into the housing and bring you up to speed on that. Thoughts, feedback?
Where are their faces?
They're all right here,
There we are.
but most are on mute. So what we'll do is we'll jump right into, actually it's going to be over here. So for those of you that are not aware, the Clear Homes architecture is kind of like, we refer to it kind of like Legos for building. And Carl has done an amazing job about not just learning how to build systems and how to use economies of scale and processes to actually get efficiencies and do things better over a lifetime, but also how it plugs together, how it can actually be delivered, and then how it can actually have a healthier lifestyle for humanity. And it starts with a structure of a frame that is basically encoded with some very interesting lava processes, and then SIP panels. And the first one that we're actually working on here is a simple home, but it has all the basic compelling elements to be able to put together the structures that you've seen. And if you haven't seen them, I'll kind of go through some of the futuristic designs. These are some on coasts. This particular slide deck is actually built for the Maui ecosystem. And they're renderings that are there. I'm going to try and find this one here. So this is actually the same types of building materials, but in a different ecosystem, different look, different feel, different sizing, as well as it's got reinforcements, and it's intended to be cyclone-proof, fire-proof, as well as termite-proof. There's a lot of, testing and verification that we've got to go through, but ultimately, it's really homes that have a purpose behind them around providing a healthy life. It's not just a life where you physically live within it, but you also, believe it or not, when people are not free, there's an emotional damage and control that people actually get hurt with. And so the ability to actually be free within an environment and not feel like you're imprisoned is a very important part of not just the design. I mean, they're amazing. You can kind of see how those panels plug in. You can see it right here. I don't know if you can see how those ceilings come together. So you have SIP panels that basically have a finish and an element, but your power, your water, and your sewage can actually run through those environments. So it's not every day where Carl and myself can actually sit down and physically be in the same room. And so we wanted to just kind of give you an update and answer any questions if you have them or thoughts. I know some of you are like, it's just wonderful. Just get them built and show them to us, and let's see if we can actually get some pricing and numbers and dollars. But the actual first one right here in Utah, and if you want to kind of understand a plan, this is how the plan rolls out. So in 2024, we're focusing on 80 plus homes, and that's mainly in 3 different areas with 1 factory. So the factory is in a place called Utah County, and there's actually aluminum elements that also tie to that right next to it. They're both in Utah County. So the actual aluminum and the manufacturing, and then in another county called Wasatch County, as well as there's maybe an Independence County that ties to it, which is a different conversation. And then down in a place called Strawberry, as well as St. George. So those are 80 homes in Utah as a target, even if we're just focusing on the first one right now. And then
We actually have 70 in Ogden and 400 self-storage units.
Here, so you just tell them. So Carl quietly just said there's 70 that are up in Ogden in addition to the 80, so it's 150.
1,600 square foot condos.
Ogden is where I'm born. Those are condos.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got how many storage units?
There's over 400.
And that's just all throughout Utah?
There's a lot more, but those
Okay.
are Those are actually memorandums of understanding have been signed for those.
Wow. So there's a lot of units that'll be going in Utah. And the goal is to be able to prove to folks within Maui, we sit on these meetings with the Maui city councils, and they basically tell us what we need to accomplish. And then they say they don't have resources to help us to accomplish it. And not that we're accomplishing it, but for them to be able to approve it. So we hope that this process here in Utah can actually give them some physical things that they can actually see, so that they can see the viability of these types of homes, not just as temporary homes, which they can be. You can build them and then move them, but that's not the intent of them. These are good quality homes that can actually be livable for, in perpetuity.
100 plus years.
Yeah. So 100 plus years. And then there's other projects with other parts of the world, such as Fiji and Jeddah, which is in Saudi Arabia. And there's some exciting things that we're talking about as these different countries and ecosystems come together. And this is for those that didn't see this prior, but imagine, and I'm actually going to pull this up because it's very telling. For those of you that have not looked at the map at scale, like a lot of us will, we sit there and we look at, the map on the wall. But if we kind of just back up, Google Earth is a really good technology that brings us the world at scale. So everything is basically plugged into it. And what we see is half of the world is actually the Pacific Ocean, like literally. So when you look at it, down here, right here is where New Zealand starts. Right over here is where Mexico starts. You have Australia starting over here, but literally half of the earth is the Pacific Ocean. I was educated by my mother actually on what the word Pacific means, and it's a place of peace. And right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is the Hawaiian Islands. And it's very interesting to see how an environment like that can actually bring humanity together. And when you look at it from a counterbalance to the European Union, where the European Union in the Second World War basically came together to stop nationalism and to actually unite some of these countries, namely 6 countries. Now it's at 27 countries. And so they all basically have a common currency, they have some common structure and some common laws, but they also come out with some structure around what they call GDRP, which is how data should actually be used and privatized. But I think it's really important when you look at Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia, as well as some of the other countries within the South. So South of Asia, when we're talking about Indonesia, the Philippines, etc. But we're talking just specifically in Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia, over 25,000 islands, 40 billion acres, and roughly 40 million people. When you look at the combination of those and some of the countries that we've touched over the last 18 plus months, you literally get into some core ecosystems. Now, some of these may not be marks or logos that you're familiar with, but they are very native ecosystems. For instance, Vanuatu is one of the most recent countries of walking away from, get this, not just one country was controlling them, but 2. France and Britain were actively controlling Vanuatu, and they said enough is enough, we're taking our 83 islands back. And they did. And now they're an independent country that not only issues their own identities, but their own passports, their own currency, their own stock exchanges, etc. Wonderful country. Even though it's, when I was there earlier this year with my family, we literally hit 2 category 5 cyclones that just decimated the environment there. And so these housing that we're talking about and building an environment like that, and when you really think about it, is it just the land that we're talking about? Or is it something greater than that? Maybe the actual world in an environment. So when you think about all these different ecosystems coming together, whether it's the Kingdom of Atui, which amazing people, amazing work. The focus here is probably one of the most organized that I've seen, to the Kingdom of Aotearoa with some of the roots that are deep and valid, and Fiji and the Kingdom of Hawaii, which I believe is one of the most well-run ecosystems and led and matured ecosystems that I've bumped into. And there may be others, but literally there's, the Kingdom of Atui is another one, or the Kingdom of Akawa is another one, and then these existing sovereign countries from Samoa to Tonga to Tuvalu to Vanuatu. and then others that can be adopted in, like we just talked about Texas and Saudi Arabia and Haiti. And then they have their own banking ecosystems. And these systems are not just built on the existing type of framework, but really a framework that leverages the earth with validations, with real world assets, that then ties into exchanges that can actually have real-time value exchange. You can see exactly if an asset is actually backed with a digital ecosystem. So like a digital currency versus a physical currency, why can't you see a balance and a balance? Why not being able, for instance, we asked some of the people, I don't know, earlier on in the call, we had a gentleman from Goldbacks on here. And so it's like, why can't you have a real balance of Goldbacks that actually quantifies into these types of assets as well? So there's beautiful things there. So you should see a combination of fiat systems into digital systems that are also native and indigenous into real world type systems. And so this is where the rubber meets the road. Well, in the European Union, this GDPR process, they basically went after Amazon, Facebook, Marriott, a lot of big companies for violating privacy, for violating rights, for violating things that they didn't have consent for. Why? Because they provided the framework, they provided the notice, they provided the time, and then there was the violation. And so imagine going after vendors where you can actually have different vendors within different ecosystems, whether it's the airlines, the hotels, the cruises, vehicles, insurance, retail, healthcare, education, or government, where they basically say, we will actually use one of these cards, whether it's an ID card or whether it's they'll actually scan these. So imagine within government, so this one on the right, imagine we just send out to all the governments and say, hey, if you have this many officers or law enforcement individuals, it's recommended to do this type of training for them. And when you do this training, you're actually helping people to understand what this process is and how it's even better than the current centralized systems. Why? Because it primarily gives people their freedom, their privacy, as well as the process of engaging with an individual. It gives them the ability to actually validate it. There's nothing stopping people from creating fraudulent systems, but when you have the digital and the physical linking together and validating one another, there's nothing in the world that can actually get better than that, at least from a compliance standpoint. So this goes through some of what we call, instead of GDPR with the actual European Union, the Pacific Union has this DTPR. So this is a digital data protection regulation. And this is an example of how it'll actually roll out within humanity. So the notices will be sent out, the ability for folks, and really what it'll combat is things like this. So come May of 2025, for instance, you just went through a process here. You want to go through this experience that you went through?
You got to bring in your social security number or card. You got to bring in your birth certificate. I just moved to Utah in November. My driver's license from California had expired. So I had to go through the process of getting a driver's license here. And they don't accept anything but birth certificate, passport, so on and so forth. The old license that wasn't expired, they didn't accept that. So you're same old stuff. You get to go take a test, and you have to driving test, eye test, things like that. And obviously I passed them all, and I'm getting my license. But I had to go through and get my passport renewed because my my birth certificate and social security cards were burned up in the Malibu fire. So got it accomplished. But there you go. So but now you're now I'm in their system.
Yep. And once you're in their system, a lot of people may say, I don't really care. This is no big deal. But what we'll do is we'll go through some things. Let's see this. So this is actually in Nigeria. And I'm going to try and find the digital one. Because in Nigeria, No. It is.
Got a chip on it.
Yeah, this is it here. So when you look at these, you're actually going to start seeing there's a payment process that they link together, and they also link them into.
Right on the back side of that one there.
Did you see it?
MasterCard, right?
Yeah, right there. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So when they start linking in your ID, so this is kind of like an ID, right? And then you've got a payment process over here. So this is something in a centralized system that has your centralized ID and it has a centralized payment. But where this thing gets really wrong really fast is when they say you need to link this with your phone. So download an application, put in your number, and then you're basically linked. And then everybody's happy. It's no problems. Everything's good. But what they're actually doing is when that application goes onto your phone, they know where you are. They know what you're doing. They literally, and a lot of people think, well, they don't really know what I'm doing. And I don't want to say that cameras go on and mics go on.
It's a
And
citizenship score.
yeah, we won't even speculate that type of thing's happening. But to your point, they literally start locking down and programming what you can do with your money. And when they start doing that, and this is not some hypothetical thing where people are talking about the future and whoa, but in Nigeria, this actually started happening. And then the people were like, we don't want this, so we're not going to actually adopt it. And then you know what they did? They said, well, the government told the actual cellular providers, if you're going to deliver cellular services in this country, you must shut off anyone that hasn't linked up their physical identity with their actual application. And so if they don't have this application on a phone, turn their phone numbers off.
It happens that way in Haiti.
Really?
All their money is on their phone.
So they literally
They
link.
don't have any dollars. They just have their phone. If the car drives around, they give them their phone to charge up because there's no real charging stations anywhere. It's such a backward place right now.
Wow. He's talking about Haiti. And a lot of these different parts of the world that are developing ecosystems that have,
The phone's everything.
they have some form of money that's been injected. One of the first things they do is they try and control. And what happened within this particular country of Nigeria is when people started forcing them to actually say, okay, your cell phone's not going to work if you don't link your ID with this application on your phone. So you can't make phone calls and you can't get text. And you know what happens when you can't get text? You can't authenticate, and then everything else comes to. So what you had was riots, massive riots in the streets, right? And so there were so many riots, and not just that, but they actually started hacking into this centralized database. So imagine that. The government is forcing compliance, and then they have physical unrest and then digital unrest. And now they've walked off of it, they've separated from it, but it's a good example of how these other countries are just litmus tests of how these things actually get deployed. We're seeing the same type of thing in a mature way in legislation down in Australia. We're seeing things in New Zealand. We're seeing things in Canada. And these are all colonial-based countries that are, first world type ecosystems. That's not like the Haitis and the Nigerias and the other parts of the world. It's, in many cases and purposes, South Africa has actually been a very free ecosystem, especially since Nelson Mandela and a lot of the ecosystems that's going on. But the structure for them to actually roll out technology in a very simple way, where identity, where life, where choice can actually be realized. And if there's a dispute, there's a process that it's not just the most wealthy individuals can actually win. It's a goal to be able to have not just equality, but a system that doesn't necessarily enslave the people, but can help the people to actually govern themselves. And so those are the things that we're focused on building out And we're grateful for you taking the time to actually do a report out. We've got 15 minutes left. We'll go ahead and open up for questions if there are any. If not, we'll go ahead and convene early. So the table is yours.
I have a question, Michael.
Go ahead.
Do you think that a lot of the governments or the government people want this? Do they understand that what the top echelon, the powers that be, do they understand that they're trying to control everything, or are they half asleep and don't really realize what's happening? Do they want these decentralized systems, and do they think that their governments are providing that as opposed to trying to control everything?
I personally feel like the people in government, most of them just feel like they're doing a job and they're getting paid well and they don't have to do a lot of work. On the flip side, I've been to Davos, I've been to the World Economic Forums, I've seen the structure and the organization and the secret combinations and the dancing and the chanting and these are also people that are thinking they're actually doing good by humanity and that certain things need certain things. And I think some of them absolutely subscribe to dark and evil ways, which I won't dig into, but there is always this light and dark thing that we have in life. And I believe that they absolutely know what they're doing. They absolutely understand and they absolutely want it. And by doing so, there's control and power from generation to generation to generation. But then on the flip side of it, for instance, this last week, I had an opportunity so it's one thing. So you basically take these plates, okay, and then you stick them on a car and then you go and park somewhere. And I'm talking the normal plates within an ecosystem. And let's say you park somewhere and it's illegal. So we'll come back into that. That's a really good comment. So let's say you park somewhere and it's illegal and they give you a parking ticket. That parking ticket is notice that you did something wrong. And it basically says you have this amount of time to actually do this and this and this. And then if you don't do it, you basically get a default judgment against you. So now they send you out notice that you're automatically, you don't have a chance here. Oh, if you want to go through a court process, you can do this and this and this. But what's crazy is that the plates link to a full name. We're getting somebody that's fine if you, it's usually, no, it's not Ray. So you usually, their name is actually linked inside of a system where their record, it doesn't come off unless you go through an expungement process and say, this wasn't this individual. So you actually fight it. So here's the key. We called in and said, okay, so what's the paths? Well, one path is you just pay it. The bill is $40. Another path is you can actually fight it. The bill or the bail, not bill, but bail is $40. So you pay the $40 in either instance, okay? So they're trying to lead you to just pay your bill and just move on. And then you can actually get a court date, and then you have to go to court. So there's 2 steps to even go through a process to potentially, assuming you can even solve it. Charles, do you have something to say? That was quite the lengthy readout. So my point is in both those cases where I had to talk to somebody to pay and then talk to somebody to actually go through a process to get a court date, 2 different people, actually 4 different calls to get to the 2 different people. I think it's complex by design. And the call routing system was second to none. And you can't pay with anything but a check by mail-in. So they make it very difficult. It's not like bill me $5 for using a Visa. It's no, you actually have to come in or you have to actually physically mail it in, okay? But here's where it gets really fun. And I was polite and kind when I was going through these conversations, but it was, okay, thank you for your time and for this information. Would you give me your name? And you know what they would do? Both instances, separate instances, they would give me their first name only.
Only. Oh, for goodness sake.
So think about that. Think about that. We're talking about, let's go back to this Hawaiian ecosystem, okay? So let's jump into this driver's license. All right, we don't want to focus on death, but let's jump into this. Notice how there is no last name here on the physical or the digital one. It's by design.
Yeah.
So why is it that a citizen or a national or a resident or a driver doesn't have the same rights as someone that is actually working for the government, making good money for not doing a lot of work? At least I can say that, as I've always worked hard to be able to make $1 in life. And I believe that the efforts that some of the folks on the private side of the ecosystem versus the public side of it, the amount of work that you go through is exponentially harder. And they don't know the sleepless nights. They don't know the after fives. They don't know the pressures and the stresses. But they got to deal with all the politics and all the bureaucratic garbage at the same time. And I think, one of the gentlemen, I actually asked him, because I could tell that he was of the local, I won't even name the actual local ecosystem, but I could tell. And I said, do you really believe that this is right? I said, and he says, well, what? He says, no, I don't believe that it's 100% right, but I also don't believe it's what you're calling it. And I called it extortion. I believe it's a form of extortion to say,
It is.
here's a bill or here's a bail and here's a complex system, and it is what it is. You take it. And oh, by the way, it'll never come off your record. And they moved the statute from 7 years to 55 years that it stays on your record.
It's the
Oh my
same. The
God.
same thing happens when you go to even government websites now have cookies, and you have to agree, or you get to go no further sometimes. But if you agree, sometimes you see there's levels of agreeing.
No.
Only absolute necessary, all or none. And if you choose none, are you afraid that you're not going to get the performance that you're supposed to get out of the page, or get past where you need to go?
Yeah, maybe not get the content.
So, I said that before, that to you, that it needs to be an amendment to our sovereign rights as human beings, that you can't give away you can't give away that sovereign ability. So a portion of this data that people are all being collected on can't be used. It should never be used. It shouldn't be used that I went to Smith's food store. Who cares? That data shouldn't be sold. I didn't go buy anything at Smith's, but I went to Smith's, and my insurance company's gonna know it because they tracked my vehicle. Smith's store might know it because I went into Smith's store. But if I buy something from Smith's store, am I allowed to give away my data because I bought, some milk? It's just, I don't think it's right. I think this marketing data and this behavioral data needs to reside within us as human beings.
Yes.
I don't think
Yes.
this taking pictures and tracking my image, it's starting to get getting very weird.
They
So-
shouldn't have access to it. That should be private. They should not have access to it. But I'm just wondering,
It's a big
if-
fight in Hollywood right now, that they don't want their digital, they don't want to pay for your digital image. So they'll create a fake Michael here, and then they'll use it for something and not pay him because his face is in the public and they're saying it's public domain. I say that that's my personal property, my image.
I agree.
And that personal data, if I've gone someplace and I'm at a public event and I'm in a crowd, it doesn't mean you get to snap that picture of me and put it and use it wherever you want to use it. That's not right. And I don't think it should be right. And I think that that's going to be, mark my word, that will be a Supreme Court decision. And unless we get the clout to turn around in our politicians and our public sentiment being heard and understood, and the public understanding what's going on with them, I think it's going to be that will be a wonderful day if we can win one of those.
Education, Carl. It's all education and informing
It's gonna
people.
have to be
That's
a-
what it is.
Amendment to Bill of Rights or something.
What's interesting on the education and basically people giving people the notice, the best example that we have is with the European Union, with GDPR and the violations with Amazon and Marriott and Facebook and so many others. Those things actually stuck and they work. But this last week, and I don't know if you saw this, the European Union actually came out and approved the removal of digital crypto-based wallets that actually let the individual own their own keys. Now, if you understand European Union, GDPR, what they're doing, and then you understand with the centralized systems, and then you understand what we're doing with the digital world, which this is a town hall, the Pacific Union, which then pulls in many other different ecosystems. And those ecosystems could actually be other states in addition to the kingdoms, or in addition to anything that's kind of adopted in. It could be counties. So imagine some counties in Oregon, imagine some states, maybe like Utah and Idaho, that actually connect down into places like Texas and others, or the even future of Texas, the Texan country. But imagine all of those coming together and saying, you know what? We as a state or as a county will adopt these types of rules and regulations. And it's as simple as just saying, you know, for instance, Fiji Airways will actually validate with identity. And all that means is they scan, they can actually look at it, see the face, validate it. And when they use the real IDs actually, the card itself cannot be compromised from a duplication standpoint. That's not saying that the identity or name on it can't be changed, because the reality is we live in an identity world where people can change their names, everything. They can change their gender, their names, their identity, and then move it around. But what if there's actually a system where different environments go through and say, you know what? We're willing to use this identity card. We're willing to use identity payments as an option, or rewards as an option, or actually go through an arbitration process within an ecosystem that's actually simple. So it's got to get very mature on how the processes work. But when you actually do that, the disputes can be very, very clean. They can be very automated. They can be private. They can be public. But they can work through a process where a QR code actually identifies an individual as well as pays an individual or pulls environments back. I'm not going to jump into this, but it is beautiful. But Danielle, I want to make sure that we got through your question and that you felt you were heard.
Yeah, no, I am heard. I just don't know if I communicated my question properly. So what makes it that the people in the state of Texas are getting it and other states or other people aren't? How come they're getting it? What is missing for all of us to get it?
It's not an aren't. I think it's a not yet.
Yeah,
and I think it's a political persuasion as well. You have a very aggressive Texas state where they're pro their citizenship's rights. To California, though, California has been laid back for how many years, and it basically was infiltrated and taken over by saboteurs. That's really what's going on in most states, especially big ones. And then you got a system of government that's felonious. You have representatives that aren't really voted in. And then you have a barrage of disinformation and propaganda supporting those people who have been feloniously elected. So, I mean, it's pretty sad, but I think that we've got some people waking up. I think we have...
Oh, yes.
We have a lot of people waking up to it, and I think that what's going to end up happening is God wins.
God always wins. Yeah, you're
God wins.
100% right.
What's interesting is the contrast between the Hawaiians versus the Texans. The Hawaiians, they're aligned, and after spending many, many months and talking to people about this, some people thought that we were crazy, but they still said it needs to happen. And they were still like, go get it done. There was only one guy he's actually Hawaiian, and he says, I don't believe you'll be able to get it done, but I think in his heart he wanted it done. I went back and talked to him a couple times because he's the only naysayer, so I continue to go back to him. And he also stores my bags, and he's a wonderful guy. But the difference is the Hawaiians are warriors. All Polynesians are. But the Texans have weapons, lots of them. And it's not a matter of needing to use them. It's a matter of them knowing and understanding their rights of what really is free and not. And this isn't the first time they're doing it. This is something that has been going on for a very long time. And over the years, they've already gotten their rights. I think it's Governor Abbott is his name. He talked about the fires, and he says, something's unique about these fires. We've never seen fires like this. For those of you that are not aware, Texas basically said, we want to defend our borders. And the federal folks were saying, some of the federal folks were saying, no, you're not going to defend your borders. And so there was a standoff. Again, the weapons came up. For those that don't know this, in Hawaii, I actually flew from Utah to Hawaii, and somehow I ended up with a weapon over in Hawaii through the airplane, through all of the systems, all of it. And when I got there, I looked at the laws and said, I'm not even supposed to have a weapon here. I asked myself why. I looked it up and it says, why can't I have a weapon? I thought we were in America. This was when I first arrived there. And so I put it in a FedEx box and I actually mailed it back. This is a 9mm pistol. And I thought, I just won't have it here. I'm not going to, the things that I'm doing are more important than dealing with something like this. And it shouldn't have happened. It should have been picked up by security, which is a whole nother conversation. But come to find out, it's actually against the law. They have actually banned weapons in Hawaii. This is supposedly a state in the United States, and they banned weapons. So they go on this line of saying we're a state, but we don't have to operate like a state. So it's really an interesting ecosystem. It's not right. I'm convinced that the state knows that it's not right. I'm convinced that that there already is a full-blown war going on within that ecosystem, within the Hawaiian ecosystem, within the Texan ecosystem. But this is an alternative where it doesn't have to have bullets or grenades or missiles or anything that have to be destructive. You could literally take the identities back and the freedoms back and the human rights back and the financial systems back, all by doing something that is very simple. You create a product that's local, you buy a product that's local, and you use a local currency. Those three things can literally change a community and a state and a country. And all they have to do is say, we're going to have a local currency, we're actually going to buy local, and we're going to focus on imports. And one thing I didn't know, but some individuals on this call actually brought it to my attention, the Texas ecosystem is like number 5 or 6 largest economy in the whole world. Like they export massive amounts. Like we're talking, it's very much so the opposite of what the Hawaiian ecosystem is. People actually go to Hawaii to spend money, 7 to 10 million people a year, versus Texas, people make money there and then export a lot of value and a lot of product. So it'll be an interesting future. Just imagine things where you've got places like Hawaii in Texas that are standing up on their own, and maybe even others like Aotearoa and others, and then maybe even whether it's counties or provinces or states that actually recognize them and treaty with them. Like France had treated with both the Hawaiian Islands and the Texas ecosystem before it became a state of either of them of America. Like these are nations that were on their own. And it wasn't just France, Denmark and Sweden, and there's tons of different other countries that had actually already done this. So it's going to be interesting to see how treaties in the future are actually realized from different jurisdictions to different jurisdictions. And the goal is to have this type of Pacific Union where these treaties can actually be very material. And it comes down to a real world where people can actually start sticking plates on, like this is actually going on a vehicle today. Not just one vehicle, but there's many of them. So there's actually, oopsie daisies, what did I do? So there's actually other ones that'll be, this is going on a different one. So some of them are going on normal cars, some of them are going on trucks, some of them are going on trailers. And literally, we're going to go out into the world and we're going to set a precedence. We're going to go through a legal process. You know, we're going to be respectful. We're going to keep everyone safe. But at the same time, we're not going to continue to pay the yearly fees. These don't expire as long as they're not sold. You know,
I want one, Mike. I want one, please.
all you got to
I'm
do,
not joking.
literally, all you have to do is jump in to this ecosystem here. You know how to log in. You come in, you just plug in. Oh, here's another feature that we've advanced this last week. So you can use a license plate within a particular state, or if you're not in a state, you can use a VIN. So you can actually drop in a VIN number and go ahead and let it search it. And then it'll automatically find that VIN number. If it's already got a plate associated to it, it'll pull that in depending on what state it's in. If it doesn't have a plate, you can actually start the process and get a plate. So you can see it's already filled in pieces of it. I won't do this, but you can actually see, you know, the details associated with that. And then imagine you go through a process, and this is where you actually get your cryptographic key. And this is actually going to be a lot simpler. Tomorrow, this is actually going to be simpler, but this is actually where the whole derived key comes into play. And you, based upon the 12 words, so you actually have whatever Life app you're using. In my case, I'm using Clear Life just because I'm on a Clear phone and all the systems are integrated. But if you're on Apple, you can download it. You can, if you're on any other technology, you can literally just download it, Android, etc. So you're going to basically just scan this with your Life app. And then you'll see, so if you see, this cryptographic key actually is derived into 12 words, but it's different 12 words than the original 12 words that you got. And so what it does is, notice the plate number here. This is a new plate based upon this here. Now, I don't think I want to add this because I've actually already added it. I wonder what would happen if I added it twice. I don't want to pay for another plate, so I don't want to do that. But if I push next, it would actually, and actually I think I can go a little bit further next without doing it.
Mike, you can use my car, which I put in the system already.
You have to do your own. So like literally,
Okay.
when you're doing these, so you can see I just created a plate here, and there's a process. I haven't paid for it or anything like that. But once you actually go through this, it will ship it out to you based upon the jurisdiction you're in. So if you're in Texas, if you're in Hawaii, or the Hawaiian Islands, or the Hawaiian Kingdom, or the Kingdom of Hawaii, you know, there's multiple different definitions. The goal is to get clarity over these definitions, or even the Kingdom of Atui. The goal is to get solid alignment within these different ecosystems within the next 30 to 60 days. And then have these different ecosystems provide treaties with one another, and then work with the different organizations that are within those environments. So these are for-profit companies that actually have their own loyalty points and rewards points, whether they're travel organizations, whether they're hotels, etc. So the key is getting it all linked together and actually adopting it and using it in the real world. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments?
Becca has a question. She can't hear though. You're muted. You're still muted, Becca.
There you go. Here's something now. No. Any other questions or thoughts?
Hey, Mike, is that best seen in Hawaiian Life or the Hawaiian Life app, or is it up to speed in Digital World now?
Digital World will work, so you can use Digital Life, or you can use Clear Life, or you can use Hawaiian Life. Hawaiian Life is currently the best example.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Michael, quick shout out. I want to introduce you to your new Pacific Union ambassador right here. He's got a
Awesome.
significant experience in Fiji and other Pacific islands.
Kia ora.
You're-
It's nice to meet you, sir.
We'll get you in person in front of him so you can learn more. But it's kind of like You couldn't write a script for a better guy to involve with your project in the
That's wonderful.
proper.
That's wonderful.
Okay, very well. Honored to meet you, and thank you for inviting me to this, Michael.
You're always welcome, and the appreciation goes two ways. Thank you for inviting me to yours. So this is Gary from Goldbacks. For those of you that are not familiar with Goldbacks, a wonderful way to be able to preserve assets that are not, yeah, right there, exactly. So if you melt that down, you actually have the equal amount of troy ounces plus the lift of whatever they charge. And this particular one is actually a currency in Utah. And that's why jurisdictions in these providences or ecosystems actually matter. So in the Constitution of Utah, gold and silver was a currency. And what Goldback does is make that currency actually usable. But the same types of things that we have to go through where, that's a little different one, the bigger one. So you basically
This
have,
is for five.
that's a $5 bill. Yep.
5 gold back. It's worth about $25.
$25, 25 US dollars.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's nice to meet you, your friend, and we look forward to connecting with you. I'll follow your lead there, Gary.
Okay, very well. Michael, thank you.
You too, bud. Any other? Yeah, Daniela's got some up there. That's awesome. There you go. Any other
Yeah, I
questions?
gotta get some too.
Becca's little green light is on now.
Becca?
See, she wanted to
She's
say
got,
something.
I think she's mute. There she goes.
They can't
No.
hear her microphone.
Pull your headphones out. I'll bet you it'll work. No, it's a
Her
setting.
microphone is setting. There's a setting in her phone or she's not muted here.
That's okay. Maybe next
She'll
time it'll
figure it
work.
out. She'll figure it out.
Any other questions? Thoughts? Comments? Feedback? Elle just told you how to do it, Becca, in the notes. All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. Thank you for your attendance. We'll see you next week.
Aloha.
Yes. Aloha. That's right. Bye.
Hello, Mike.
Kia ora.